So, I want to know, what's your favorite thing about the Enneagram? I also like that in your post you said something about how you don't live your life by it.
Right.
So what's that how has that been a good tool for you? And could you talk about that?
Yeah, sure. I think for me, I didn't really know anything about the Enneagram until I went on a tour this time last year. And when I heard about it, I've never really been pegged by a test. I've always taken tests and people are like, oh, well, this is how I am. And it totally got me, man. I learned so much about myself. I'm like, oh, great. Every time I took Myers-Briggs or whatever, I would get a relative answer, but nothing would really resonate with me so much that I felt known. I was just kind of like, oh, okay, that's fine. When I took the Enneagram, I kept getting different numbers. So I was like, oh, I was a 4, and then I was a 7, and then I was a 2, and then I was a 6. Literally never the same number. And my friend goes, oh, you're a 9 then. I'm like, what? What is that? And then they read the description to me, and then I bought the real test and took it. And it just read me like a book. I felt so vulnerable. I was reading it crying. Just oh my gosh, I can't believe a test could tell me this much about myself. And we all started talking about it, and it's kind of been a really huge part of how I recognize patterns and habits in myself and in other people too. I don't like asking somebody, well, what's your Enneagram number? And then defining them off of that, because I think, everybody's different. Even if, all these people are 3s, they're all gonna act differently.
Right, they're still individuals and have different experiences and all of that.
Right, but for me, it definitely helped knowing who I was, at the core of who I am, why I fight for peace all the time, and why I fight to make sure everybody is heard. It's not necessarily trying to people please, but I wanna make sure everyone feels known and seen, and that their opinion matters, because it does, and I genuinely care about that. So for me, I've just seen what it's like in the last year and a half to be really unhealthy and then really healthy, and how that all works out, and to watch it play out through the lens of the Enneagram has been really crazy.
Yeah.
And so me and a lot of my friends, we talk about it, but we're not crazy fanatical about it.
Right.
But it has helped me a lot, and spiritually too. So.
Yeah, I'm the same way. 9 was whoa, that was very much me, and it's a great tool, but I've been surprised at how much it's totally a phase, a fad right now. Everybody's so into it, and it's kind of funny.
People are doing youth group on the Enneagram. Yeah. I'm okay, guys.
No, this isn't the Bible.
Yeah, no, but it's fun. It's just really cool. But I also think, I don't know if you've read or heard of Richard Rohr's book, but it's coinciding with scripture, and then giving references of people in the Bible by how they reacted to things or how they were perceived when you read, what they probably would have been if they had taken the Enneagram. And so you get to see different layers of people, but 9s are actually representation of Jesus and Jonah in the Bible. But Jesus is obviously perfect, right? But the
Jonah,
9s,
the epitome of unhealthy.
Right.
Spiritually,
but, so the 9s can see they are every personality, but not in a weird bipolar way, but just they can see from everyone's point of view. So I thought that was so crazy.
Yeah. What's one of the biggest pieces of advice or something that's helped you as a 9, as a peacemaker who's trying to keep the peace and but still having to face conflict? I, as a 9, I hate conflict, but being an adult, being in a career, I have to walk into that and still be bold. So have you found anything, whether it was from that book by Richard Rohr or just a piece of advice that's really stuck with you for as you walk, as you're walking that out?
Yeah, for sure. I think for me, the biggest win I had last year, I was talking to some of my friends who were asking me the same question, what is it like being a 9 and then doing artistry and having a voice? And I practically am working with 3 different companies, trying to manage my career, but also be myself at the same time, and trying to maneuver all of that. And you have to have conversations that are outside of your comfort zone. And just growing into who you are as a person is one thing. And then when you add a tool like the Enneagram or whatever, and that comes into the mix, it's oh man, I genuinely am built to hate conflict because I desire peace so much. And so for me, I've had to just learn to say no, and to learn that not everything that happens in life needs to be taken super personally, and to know that my contentment and my opinion matters. I think that's a huge thing. And also just telling people how I feel without like any restraint is really difficult, has been difficult for me in the past. Now I'm like, it's helped me so much. I feel like I'm thriving in all of those areas where I wasn't before. So it's just been good for me to say, you know what, no, this is how I feel about that. And for me to speak up about things is pretty big now, looking back to where I was probably 3 years ago. But who you surround yourself with too, like if you have really abrasive people around you or people that don't want to listen to you, then nine's just like, I will just like completely internalize everything and just shut down because I just don't feel like anyone wants to know me. So I'll just be like, well, you know, it's already too much of a struggle to voice my opinion, so I'll just go away.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I had to fight through all of that, and yeah, it's nuts. It just brings to light so many things that I didn't even know needed to be brought into the light.
So when you're in those moments of like, there's people who aren't listening to you, or you want to like just kind of withdraw, or like you're having to face conflict and you're just in the middle of that uncomfortableness, are there things that like you have to remind yourself of in that moment?
Yeah,
or
I have to remind myself how they feel too. Because like that's when I'm like, oh, okay, you're doing that because you're projecting insecurity on me, or like you're doing that because you're afraid of if this happens or whatever. So I have to think about what's happening, why it would make them upset, or why they wouldn't want to listen to me, and then know that it's not about me. Because it's never about a person. All people are like genuinely, you know, not all people, I don't know, but like I feel like most people are genuinely good and at their core, and they've just had things that have happened to them in their life where they react, and we all react certain ways based on how we were raised, like our childhood too, and trauma in our life. So you just have to have grace for people. I think that's what has been the big thing for me, is learning grace instead of giving an excuse for somebody based off of like what they do, you know? It's so much deeper than just the surface level of someone getting mad. Like, oh, why are you angry? Let's talk about that.
It's
like,
never
what?
the surface
I don't want to talk
problem.
about that. Like, you know, so it's just been, you have to dig deep, man, when you don't want to, so.
Yeah, that's so good. And it's always coming back to understanding, and this is just like a really good tool for understanding each other.
Sure.
And just realizing you don't always know the whole story.
Oh,
so
yeah,
That's
definitely.
so good. I so relate to that.
Definitely, yeah.